Everything you were taught about human history assumes one thing: that progress is a straight line, that we started small, simple, barely surviving, and over time, we became smarter. We learned to farm, then to build, then to write, then to engineer. Stone tools became bronze, bronze became iron, iron became steel, and eventually, we became us. That's the story we're told. It's clean, comforting, predictable, but there's a problem. The story only works if nothing came before it. And that assumption has never been proven. Because history is not written by stone, it's written by people. And people don't like inconvenient questions, especially questions that suggest we might not be as original as we think, or as advanced, or as new. We are taught that intelligence accumulates slowly, that knowledge stacks generation by generation, that once humanity learns something, it never truly forgets it. But that belief is not a law of nature, it's a hope that the past was simpler, less dangerous, less capable of destruction. Because if the past was advanced, then it could also fail. And if it failed once, it could fail again. That possibility makes people uncomfortable. So it's easier to imagine our ancestors as primitive, hunters, gatherers, wandering from place to place, concerned only with survival, people with no long-term plans, no complex ideas, no deep understanding of the world. That version of the past feels safe, because it places us at the top. But stone does not care about comfort. Stone does not participate in agreements. Stone does not rewrite itself to fit a timeline. Stone only records effort, weight, precision, intent, and sometimes, stone records fear. Across the planet, there are structures that demand a question no one likes answering. Not because the question is complicated, but because the answer might be. These places don't whisper, they don't hint, they exist. Massive, heavy, silent. And they exist where they shouldn't. They exist when they shouldn't. They exist in ways that don't align with the story we repeat to ourselves. We are told that early humans lived day to day. But some structures require planning across generations. We are told they lacked organization. But some projects demand coordination on a scale we associate with states, not tribes. We are told they feared nature, but some constructions suggest they were trying to survive something far worse than storms or predators, something sudden, something overwhelming, something they knew was coming. History prefers slow change, gradual evolution, small steps forward, because catastrophe breaks narratives. Catastrophe forces uncomfortable resets. And resets raise the question civilization wants to ask itself: what if we are not the first version of humanity to believe we've figured everything out? What if intelligence doesn't rise forever, but spikes? What if knowledge can be lost as easily as it is gained? What if entire chapters of human capability ended not with decline, but with silence? Silence is hard to study. Silence leaves no witnesses. All it leaves behind are fragments. And fragments are easy to dismiss, unless there are too many of them. Unless they start forming patterns. Patterns across continents. Patterns across time. Patterns that repeat the same behavior over and over again. Build, advance, concentrate, and then hide. Bury, seal, disappear. That sequence appears more often than we are comfortable admitting, and once you notice it, it's impossible to ignore. Because these structures do not look like homes. They do not look like villages. They do not look like places meant only for daily life. Some look like warnings. Others look like vaults. Some look like shelters. And a few look like scars. We assume ancient people built to celebrate life. But what if some of them built because they feared death? Not death in the abstract, but a specific kind of death. Fast, total, unavoidable. A kind of destruction that leaves no time to run. No time to adapt. Only time to prepare. Preparation is not primitive behavior. Preparation implies memory. It implies experience. It implies that something has happened before, and that it could happen again. Modern civilization believes it is protected by technology, by knowledge, by control. But every civilization believes that, right up until the moment it isn't. The ruins of the past are filled with that same confidence. Confidence frozen in stone. We like to think we are standing at the peak of human history, looking back at a long, simple climb. But what if we are standing on a plateau built atop something older, something buried, something we didn't build, something we inherited without understanding, like waking up in a palace with no memory of how it was made, and assuming it must have been simple to construct because we are here now, because the lights are on, because the systems still work for the moment. But palaces crumble, cities vanish, civilizations collapse. And when they do, the next generation rarely believes how advanced the previous one truly was. They look at ruins and underestimate the hands that built them. They always do. We are no different. We look at the past and see limitations. But the past may have been looking forward with fear. Fear of something powerful enough to erase memory itself. Fear of forces that don't negotiate. Fear of mistakes that cannot be undone. If such a civilization existed, it would not announce itself. It would not leave instructions. It would leave warnings, encoded in scale, in depth, in deliberate absence. And it would rely on one thing to tell its story honestly: stone. Because stone does not lie, it waits. And once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. We're told civilization begins with farming. That is the foundation, the first brick in the wall. Before farming, there was chaos, small groups, short lifespans, no permanence. According to the accepted story, nothing truly complex can exist without agriculture, because farming creates surplus. Surplus creates stability. Stability creates specialization. And specialization creates civilization. That is the model. It appears in textbooks, museums, documentaries, school classrooms. It is repeated so often that it stops sounding like a theory and starts sounding like a law of nature. We're told that once humans learned to control food, everything else followed naturally. Villages formed. Villages grew into towns. Towns became cities. And cities eventually gave birth to technology, writing, engineering, mathematics, architecture, progress, step by step. No leaps, no gaps, no reversals. This story is attractive because it feels reasonable. It mirrors how we imagine growth should happen: slow, predictable, upward. We imagine early humans waking up each day, thinking only about survival, food, shelter, safety. No time for abstraction, no time for long-term planning, no time for grand projects. According to this view, large structures come late. Monuments come late. Complex engineering comes very late. Only after centuries of accumulated knowledge. Only after stable societies exist. Only after humans have practiced being human for a very long time. This timeline gives us comfort. It places us at the peak, the most advanced point on a long climb. It suggests we are smarter than everyone who came before, more capable, more informed, more in control, and because of that, we feel secure. But there is a quiet assumption hidden inside this model. An assumption so basic that most people never think to question it. The assumption is this: once knowledge is gained, it is never truly lost. That intelligence only moves in one direction, forward. We assume that mistakes teach lessons, that failures lead to improvement, that collapse is always temporary. But history itself does not guarantee that. Because history is not the study of what happened, it is the study of what survived. And survival is selective. Entire cultures disappear without leaving records. Languages vanish. Technologies vanish. Ideas die. And when that happens, the next generation fills in the gaps with whatever story makes the most sense to them. That's how timelines are built, not from certainty, but from continuity. From what connects cleanly. From what doesn't raise too many questions. The official timeline works because it assumes a smooth transition from simple to complex. But smooth transitions are rare in nature. Nature prefers shocks, floods, droughts, ice ages, volcanic winters, mass extinctions. The Earth does not move gently through time. It lurches, and when it does not ask permission. Civilizations that exist during those moments either adapt quickly or vanish completely. And vanishing is dangerous for historians because absence creates the illusion that nothing was there to begin with. We assume early humans were incapable because we see no evidence of their capabilities. But evidence does not erase itself gently. It is destroyed, buried, submerged, pulverized, or sealed away. The timeline we trust is built on what remains visible, not on what once existed. And that distinction matters. Because if even one advanced structure exists before agriculture, then the entire sequence collapses, because farming is supposed to be the beginning. Not the middle, not the aftermath, the beginning. If something complex appears before it, then complexity does not depend on farming. And if complexity does not depend on farming, then the story is missing something fundamental. We are told early humans could not organize large groups. But organization does not require agriculture. It requires leadership, memory, shared purpose. We are told they could not plan long term. But planning is older than farming. Animals plan migrations. Predators plan ambushes. Humans plan stories. We are told they lacked the mental capacity for symbolic thinking. But symbolic thinking appears tens of thousands of years earlier. In art, burial practices, and ritual, we are told they lived only for the present. But the very act of teaching requires belief in a future. So why are we so certain they could not build? Why are we so confident they could not coordinate? Why do we assume they could not understand geometry or weight or force? Because the timeline demands it. If they could do those things, then the climb was not gradual. And that is unsettling. A gradual climb suggests safety. A sudden peak suggests danger, because peaks can fall. The official story protects us from the idea of regression, from the idea that humanity might have already climbed high once and lost everything. If that happened, it would mean our current world is not unprecedented. It would mean our technologies are not new, only rediscovered, rebuilt, relearned. And that possibility threatens something deeper than history. It threatens identity. We define ourselves. As the most advanced humans who have ever lived, we believe that because our tools are complex and our cities are tall, but complexity can reappear without continuity. A child does not need to remember the first fire to light a new one, and if one generation loses knowledge, the next does not know what it lost, it only knows what it finds. So the timeline smooths over gaps, it labels them primitive. Not because they were, but because we don't know what they knew. This is where the cracks begin. Because some structures do not look experimental. They do not look like early attempts. They look confident. They look deliberate. They look as though the builders knew exactly what they were doing. No trial and error. No obvious learning curve, just execution. That alone is a problem. Because learning curves leave scars, mistakes, abandoned projects, failed designs, but some ancient constructions show no hesitation, only completion, and that implies experience. Experience implies repetition, and repetition implies a history that is no longer visible, which raises a simple but dangerous question. What if what we call the beginning was actually a restart? What if farming was not a breakthrough, but a recovery? What if humans did not discover agriculture because they were becoming smarter, but because something forced them to rebuild from scratch? The official timeline does not ask that question because it does not want to, because answering it opens doors that cannot easily be closed. If civilization can rise and fall completely, then our world is fragile, not special, not permanent, just temporary. And if the past contains evidence of advanced capability without agriculture, then agriculture was not the cause of civilization. It was a response to loss, a method of control after instability, a way to ensure survival when something had already gone wrong. That interpretation changes everything. It reframes early humans not as beginners, but as survivors. Survivors do not experiment, they remember. They rebuild what they can, and they hide what they fear. Which brings us to the problem the official timeline cannot solve. Because some structures appear fully formed, massive, precise, purposeful. They do not sit comfortably at the start of history. They sit awkwardly before it, before farming, before cities, before metallurgy, before the beginning. And once you accept that, the timeline stops feeling solid. It starts feeling negotiated, adjusted, held together by what we choose not to see. Because some structures appear before the beginning. At first, it doesn't look impossible. Just stone, old stone, weathered, silent, heavy, nothing dramatic. Until you understand the scale, this isn't a single structure. It's not a monument. It's not a ruin in the traditional sense. It's a complex, layered, planned, deliberate. Circular spaces carved into the earth, each one defined by towering stone pillars, arranged with intent, not randomly placed, not scattered, aligned. These pillars don't rise a few feet off the ground. They stand taller than a human, heavier than anything a small group should be able to control. Some of them weigh as much as a fully loaded truck. And they are not rough. They are shaped, clean edges, balanced proportions, smooth surfaces where smoothness was clearly chosen. This was not accidental work. This was not survival behavior. This was not someone improvising with what they had. This was someone executing a plan, and scale matters. Because scale reveals intention. Small things can be mistakes. Large things cannot. When something this massive exists, someone committed to it, time, labor, coordination, none of which are free. To move stone of this size, you don't just need strength. You need agreement. You need leadership. You need people willing to show up every day, to do something that does not immediately keep them alive. That alone should make us pause. Because survival cultures do not build like this. They move, they adapt. They avoid unnecessary weight, but this place embraces weight. It anchors itself into the ground, as if it was meant to stay. And the more you look, the heavier it becomes, not just physically, mentally, because these pillars are not blank, they are carved. Not with random scratches, not with simple marks, but with animals, predators, insects, creatures that bite, sting, hunt, and kill. Their forms wrap around the stone, flowing with confidence. These are not crude drawings. They show observation, understanding, intentional design. The carver knew these animals. Not just what they looked like, but how they moved, how they threatened, how they mattered, and there is no sign of hesitation. No erased lines, no failed attempts, just finished work, which suggests something uncomfortable. This was not practice. You don't practice on stone this large. You practice on smaller things first. But here, the first thing we see is already complete, already refined, already confident. That means the learning happens somewhere else, earlier, out of sight. And then there is the question of time, not the time it took to build. We are not going there, the time it existed. This place is older than the things we are told should come before it. Older than farming, older than permanent settlements, older than the technologies we assume make construction possible. According to the timeline we trust, this should not exist yet, but it does. And it does not look like an experiment, it looks like a result, which creates a contradiction. If people were not settled, why build something that cannot move? If food was uncertain, why invest in something that produces none? If survival was the only concern, why carve symbols instead of weapons? This place does not feed you. It does not shelter you from storms. It does not make daily life easier. It consumes effort, which means its purpose was not survival. It was something else. Something important enough to justify everything it cost. And then there is the part no one expects. This place did not slowly decay. It was not left to the elements. It was not abandoned when people moved on. It did not fall apart over time. It was filled. Intentionally, carefully, layer by layer. As if someone made a decision that it needed to disappear. Not someday, but now. They did not smash the pillars. They did not topple the stones. They did not erase the carvings. They preserved them. By hiding them. That choice matters, because destruction is emotional. Burial is calculated. You destroy something you hate. You bury something you fear, or something you want to keep untouched, or something you don't want to be found too early. And the effort to bury this place was enormous. It required just as much coordination as building it, which means this was not panic. It was a decision, a final act. And here is where the discomfort deepens. If this place was sacred, why hide it? If it was dangerous, why build it so carefully first? If it was a mistake, why not dismantle it? Burial suggests intent without explanation, a message without words, a door closed without a warning sign. We are standing in front of something that was meant to be forgotten, not erased, forgotten. And that raises a question we cannot answer yet. Not what this place was, not who built it, but why someone decided that the future should not see it. Because this was not abandonment, it was not destruction. It was burial. And once you realize that, you can't help but wonder, what were they afraid of that made hiding it feel safer than leaving it behind? And then they buried it, not abandoned, not destroyed, buried. At first, there is nothing frightening about it. In fact, it looks impressive, orderly, advanced. A city laid out with intention, straight streets, careful spacing. Buildings aligned as if someone had planned the whole thing before the first brick was ever placed. This was not a settlement that grew randomly. This was a city that was designed. Homes built from standardized bricks, drainage channels running beneath the streets, water management systems integrated directly into daily life. Some houses even had private bathing areas. This is the kind of infrastructure we associate with confidence, with stability, with people who believe tomorrow will look like today. You don't invest this much effort into organization if you expect everything to collapse. You build like this when you think you have time, when you think the future belongs to you. This city was not struggling. It was functioning, efficient, alive. People walked these streets. Children played near doorways. Families cooked meals. Trades were practiced. Routines repeated. This was not the edge of survival. This was civilization. And that is what makes what happened next so disturbing. Because this city did not decline. It did not slowly empty out. It did not erode away through centuries of neglect. There are no layers of gradual abandonment, no evidence of a long famine, no signs of invasion, no walls hastily reinforced, no weapons scattered in the streets. There is no transition period. Instead, there is a moment, a sharp line between before and after. Because when archaeologists uncovered the streets, they found bodies. Not in graves, not arranged, not honored, just lying there. In the open, on roads, inside homes. Wherever people happened to be, some were walking, some were working. Some were with their families. They were caught exactly where life had placed them, and then life stopped. Their positions tell a story no words are needed for. Arms raised, bodies twisted, hands clenched. These are not people who prepared to die. These are people who had no warning. In one location, a small group lay together, a man, a woman, a child. They were close, too close to be coincidence. They were holding on to each other. That detail changes everything. Because panic brings people together. Not ritual, not burial, panic. No one came back for them. No one cleaned the streets. No one collected the dead. They stayed exactly where they fell. For thousands of years. And yet, something is missing. In a hot environment, exposed bodies do not last. Animals find them. Scavengers tear them apart. Bones scatter. But here, the skeletons were largely intact, undisturbed, untouched. As if something had warned every living creature to stay away. That is not normal. Predators do not respect tragedy, they respect danger. Which means whatever killed these people did not stop with them. The city itself tells the same story. Damage is uneven. The destruction is strongest near the center. Buildings farther away remain more intact. That pattern is not subtle. It points inward. Toward a single moment, a single origin. And beneath the debris, something even stranger appears. Blackened fragments. Bricks fused together. Pottery warped into unnatural shapes. Materials that were once separate, now merged. As if they had been exposed to extreme heat. Not slowly, not over time, but all at once. This kind of transformation requires temperatures far beyond ordinary fire. House fires don't do this. Citywide fires don't do this. This is heat so intense that solid materials behave like liquid for a brief moment and then freeze in place. Like a snapshot, time arrested by force. And still, no one rushes to explain it, because explanations carry consequences. Instead, the facts are laid out quietly, almost carefully. Measurements, observations, anomalies. And one detail refuses to stay quiet: radiation, traces detected in the remains. Not background levels, not environmental noise, but elevated readings, localized, specific. The kind of readings that suggest exposure, brief, intense, deadly. And here is where restraint matters. Because naming the cause too early ends the conversation. It turns mystery into debate. So instead, we ask a simpler question. What kind of event leaves a city intact enough to recognize, yet kills its population instantly? What kind of force melts stone, but leaves no crater large enough to swallow the city whole? What kind of disaster happens so fast that no one runs, no one hides, no one survives long enough to warn others? Floods don't behave this way. Disease doesn't behave this way. War leaves patterns. Weapons leave marks. This left silence, a city frozen in its last breath. And the strangest part is not what we see, it's what we don't. There is no myth of recovery, no later settlement built on top. No attempt to reuse the space. It was avoided. As if the land itself had become untouchable. As if memory lingered. Sometimes history remembers through fear. Stories passed down. Warnings disguised as superstition. Places people learn not to approach. Not because they know why, but because someone before them did. And this city became one of those places. A lesson written in absence. A warning carved into melted brick. A reminder that civilization can end without drama, without build-up, without heroes. Just a moment, a flash, and then nothing. And once you understand that, once you truly sit with it, the unease changes shape. Because this was not an experiment, not a failed beginning. This was a peak, a city that had already figured things out. And if something could erase this, then progress is not protection. It is exposure. The more organized you are, the more vulnerable you become to sudden collapse. And this realization does not belong to the past, it belongs to us. Because we also build cities that assume tomorrow. We also trust infrastructure. We also believe disasters announce themselves in advance. But this one did not. Whatever happened here, happened in seconds. No time to adapt, no time to escape, no time to learn. And when the dust settled, there was no one left to explain it. Only stone, only heat-warped remnants, only bones. And this wasn't the only place. By themselves, each of these places feels strange, uncomfortable, hard to explain, but still isolated. One anomaly can always be dismissed. Two can be argued. Three begin to form something else entirely, a pattern, and patterns are dangerous. Because once the human brain recognizes a pattern, it stops asking if something is happening and starts asking why. Let's step back, not forward, back, not to a new place, but to what we've already seen. One site was not destroyed. It was not abandoned. It was deliberately buried, stone by stone, layer by layer, as if someone decided that what was there should not remain visible, not erased, hidden. Another city was not buried. It was not sealed. It was not given time. It was erased in a single moment. Life stopped where it stood. No warning, no escape, no survivors to explain what happened. Two very different outcomes, but they share something critical. Neither ended naturally. One was concealed, the other was annihilated. Both required intent. One required planning. The other required overwhelming force, and neither fits comfortably. Inside the story we like to tell ourselves about the past. The accepted narrative prefers gradual change, slow transitions, clean handoffs from one era to the next. But this is not gradual. This is abrupt, decisive, final. And the difference between the two is not random. It feels reactive, as if one place was dealt with before something happened, and the other was dealt with by something happening, which raises a question most people avoid. What if these are not separate mysteries? What if they are responses to the same threat at different moments? One before, one during. And that question changes how we look at everything else. Because when humans face danger, they don't respond randomly. They respond in patterns. They hide. They flee. They fortify. They go where they believe the danger cannot reach. And that instinct is universal. It does not require advanced technology. It does not require science. It only requires memory. Memory of something that went wrong once and must not happen again. So now we introduce the third piece, not as a new mystery, but as a reaction, a solution. Because if one place was buried and another was destroyed instantly, the next logical question is, what do you do? If you believe something like that could happen again, you don't build taller, you don't spread out. You don't decorate, you go down, deep, out of sight, out of reach. And you don't just hide temporarily, you plan to stay. For as long as it takes. What we are looking at now is not a city in the usual sense. It is not meant to be admired. It is not meant to be visited. It is not meant to be seen at all. It is meant to disappear, vertically, downward, layer upon layer. Not one or two levels, but many. Enough to place a massive amount of earth between you and the surface, between you and the sky. This is not casual construction. This is not shelter from weather. This is preparation for something extreme. Because no one chooses darkness lightly. No one chooses confinement willingly. No one chooses to live underground, unless the alternative feels worse, much worse. The engineering here is not decorative. It is defensive. Every corridor is narrow. Every turn is intentional. Movement is controlled. Access is restricted. This space was designed to slow intruders, to exhaust them, to trap them, and most importantly, to seal itself from the inside. That detail alone should make us pause. Because most fortifications are designed to keep people out. This one is designed to keep something else in or something else out. After the people inside are already sealed away, the entrances are not grand. They are choke points. The doors are not light. They are massive. Circular, stone, heavy enough that no one on the outside could force them open, but easy enough to close from within. That tells us something about the psychology of the builders. They were not worried about escape. They were worried about breach. And they were not worried about siege. They were worried about exposure. Exposure to something that does not negotiate. Something that does not wait. Something that arrives all at once. Because underground life is not comfortable. It requires planning, ventilation, water access, food storage, waste management, All of it must function flawlessly, for months, years, maybe longer. This is not a panic bunker. This is not a temporary hideout. This is a long-term survival strategy. A complete alternative world, one that assumes the surface may become unlivable, and that assumption matters. Because most ancient threats come from other humans, and humans can be reasoned with, negotiated with, outweighted. But you do not build like this. To escape swords, you do not carve cities into the earth. To hide from arrows, you do not design ventilation shafts that reach deep water if your enemy can simply walk away. You only do this if the danger is environmental, global, indifferent. Something that does not target cities specifically, but makes all surface life unsafe, which brings us back to the pattern. One place was buried intentionally, as if someone decided it needed to be sealed away. Another place was wiped out instantly, as if someone didn't have time to respond at all. And now we see a place designed to endure something that affects the surface itself. These are not random choices. These are different strategies, applied to the same category of fear. And that fear is not subtle. It is not abstract. It is directional, downward, away from the sky, which leads to a question that hits the American mind particularly hard. Why go underground? Unless the danger comes from above, that question does not require a specific answer. It only requires imagination. And imagination is far more powerful than explanation. Because once you imagine a threat that makes the sky unsafe, a lot of other things begin to align. Sudden destruction, extreme heat, instant death, long-term avoidance, burial, sealing, silence. And silence is the most important piece. Because if a civilization survives something traumatic, it does not celebrate it. It remembers it quietly. Through behavior, through taboo, through architecture, through choices that seem irrational, until you understand the fear behind them. And fear does not need language to persist. It only needs repetition. Parents teaching children where not to go. Communities teaching stories of places best left alone. Cities designed around worst-case scenarios, not best-case futures. This is not optimism. This is trauma, encoded in stone. Now pause for a moment and consider what this means for us. We like to think of ourselves as the first civilization to fear extinction. The first to build bunkers, the first to talk about global threats, the first to worry about skies filled with things we cannot control. But that may not be true. We may simply be rediscovering an old fear, one that was already learned the hard way, and buried, and hidden, and built around. What makes this unsettling is not the idea of ancient catastrophe. It is the idea of ancient adaptation, because adaptation implies survival. And survival implies memory, which means someone lived long enough to decide what the next move should be. Bury this, hide that, go underground, close the doors, wait. That is not primitive thinking. That is strategic thinking. And strategy only emerges after failure, after loss, after something goes wrong, so completely that it reshapes how an entire culture sees the world. And once that happens, you don't need to explain it to future generations. You just teach them what to do, where to go, what not to touch, what not to uncover, what not to bring back into the light, because some things are safer when forgotten. And now the pattern is clear enough that it can no longer be ignored. Burial, instant destruction, underground refuge. These are not three mysteries. They are three responses: before, during, after, and once you see that sequence, it becomes impossible to treat these sites as unrelated. They are pages from the same story, torn out, scattered, but still readable. If you stop looking at them individually and start looking at how they react to the same invisible pressure, a pressure that does not leave inscriptions, does not announce itself, does not wait for permission, it simply arrives and forces a decision: hide, seal, or die where you stand. We don't yet know what that pressure was, and we don't need to, not yet, because the pattern alone is enough to change how we see the past, and more importantly, how we see ourselves. Because if ancient people built in fear of the sky, and if they were right to do so, then the most dangerous mistake we could make is assuming we are smarter than they were, or safer, or exempt. We build upward. They built downward, and both choices tell a story. But only one of them assumes the sky will always be kind. There is something different about water. Fire is violent. Earth is heavy. Air is chaotic. But water is quiet. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't roar until it's already too late. It waits, and then it takes everything. Out here, far from deserts and stone and buried earth, there's no sandstorm memory. No ash, no rubble rising above the surface, only blue. Endless blue, calm enough to look harmless. And that is what makes this place feel like a funeral. Not because of what happened, but because of how quietly it disappeared. Beneath the surface, shapes begin to emerge. Not jagged, not broken. Clean, too clean. Flat plains, sharp edges. Straight lines that do not belong to chance. The descent is slow. Light fades gently, as if the ocean is asking permission to show what it has hidden. And then you see it. Not debris, not wreckage, but structure. Terraces carved into solid stone. Steps descending with intention. Platforms layered like they were meant to be walked on. This does not look like something that collapsed. It looks like something that was completed. There's no sense of panic here. No shattered walls, no scattered remains, just geometry. Still, patient. Waiting. If destruction leaves chaos, this place left order. And that is unsettling, because order implies time. Time implies use, and use implies life. This was not a place people passed through. This was a place people occupied. The scale confirms it. These are not decorative features, not symbolic gestures. These are massive constructions cut directly into bedrock. Stone that does not forgive mistakes. Stone that remembers every decision. And yet, there are no signs of hesitation. No abandoned cuts, no corrections, just long, confident lines. As if whoever made this knew exactly what they were doing, and exactly where they were, but the ocean does not care about intention. It does not negotiate. It does not preserve for meaning. It covers, slowly at first, then completely. And that is where the grief enters, because water erases without violence. It buries without impact. It makes disappearance feel natural, acceptable, inevitable. But this disappearance was not slow, not gradual, not the gentle rise of tides over centuries. The geometry here is too sharp, too intact, too close to the surface. If this place had been surrendered to the ocean slowly, it would have softened, rounded, collapsed, but it hasn't. Edges remain defined, terraces remain level. As if the sea arrived all at once, in a single overwhelming movement. As if the land simply dropped away, and what was once above was suddenly below. The ocean didn't slowly take this place, it swallowed it. That sentence matters, because swallowing is not erosion. It is consumption, sudden, total, and swallowing leaves no witnesses. Only absence. This is not the story of one region. Not one culture, not one moment. Stone was buried, a city was erased. And here, an entire place was drowned. Different materials, different environments, same outcome, disappearance. And that is when the pattern finishes expanding. Because now the map stretches wider, across continents, across climates, across elements, earth, fire, water, different forces, same result. Advanced places ending abruptly, not decaying into myth, but vanishing. And the ocean is the most unforgiving witness of all. Because it keeps secrets perfectly. No ruins rising above ground. No skeletons to examine. No melted bricks. Just silence. And silence is easy to ignore until divers descend. Until light cuts through water. Until geometry appears where it shouldn't. And then the grief returns. Because underwater ruins do not look destroyed. They look abandoned mid-sentence, mid-thought, midlife, stairs that go nowhere now. Platforms meant for gathering, open spaces that once held voices. All of it preserved in a state of quiet interruption. No sign of escape. No evidence of preparation. Just absence. And absence is the signature of sudden endings. If this had been a slow retreat, there would be layers, temporary structures, makeshift solutions, evidence of adaptation, but there is none. This place did not adapt. It vanished, and the most unsettling part is not how old it might be, it's when it disappeared. Because the ocean does not rise overnight without help. It requires force, a shift, a rupture, something violent enough to move entire coastlines. In a single event, the kind of event that does not respect borders, that does not choose victims carefully, that does not care how advanced you are, which means this was not a local disaster. This was not a regional tragedy. This was planetary. And when you see it that way, the emotional tone changes. This is no longer curiosity. This is mourning, because what we are looking at are not isolated losses. They are coordinated silences. Different places, different fates, same ending, buried, burned, drowned, and none of them recovered. None of them rebuilt on top. None of them left warnings, which suggests the same thing. Again and again, there was no time, no chance to adapt. No opportunity to pass on lessons, just survivors, if any. And survivors do not build monuments, they build shelters, they hide. They remember quietly, and then they teach their children where not to go, what not to touch, what not to wake up. That is how memory survives catastrophe, not through records. Through avoidance, through fear, through architecture. And now the world looks different, because once you accept that water took cities the same way fire and earth did, you can no longer contain this story to one part of the planet. This was not an Asian story, not a Middle Eastern story, not a Pacific story. This was a human story, and humans live everywhere. Which means whatever caused this did not discriminate. It did not target beliefs. It did not target cultures. It targeted the surface. And the surface lost. What remains now is not proof, not evidence, not conclusions. What remains is absence. On a scale too large to ignore. Absence carved into stone. Absence melted into brick. Absence resting beneath kilometers of water. And the ocean keeps the deepest absence of all. because it feels peaceful. Calm, blue, but peace after loss is still loss. And standing above this place, knowing what lies below, you begin to understand why ancient people did not trust the world to remain stable. Why they buried, why they hid, why they went underground. They were not pessimists, they were witnesses. And witnesses do not speculate, they prepare. This place does not scream danger. It whispers it, through silence, through stillness, through geometry that refuses to belong to chance. And as the camera drifts upward again, leaving the ruins behind, the feeling is not shock, it is sadness, because what was lost here was not primitive, it was deliberate, and deliberate things do not vanish unless something far more powerful intervenes. The ocean didn't slowly take this place, it swallowed it. And once you understand that, you realize this story is no longer about the past. It is about cycles, and the water is very patient. Let's pause, not to explain, not to conclude, just to ask. Because conclusions end conversations, questions don't. Everything we've seen so far can still exist inside the official story, if we're willing to stretch it. If we're willing to add footnotes, if we're willing to call things exceptions. But when exceptions start lining up, they stop being exceptions. They start asking something back, so let's not say what happened. Let's ask what could have happened. What if? Human history is not a straight line. What if it's a loop? What if progress is not permanent, but conditional? We assume intelligence accumulates, that once knowledge is discovered, it can never truly disappear, but history doesn't actually support that assumption. Libraries burn, languages die, skills vanish. Entire ways of thinking go extinct, and they don't leave warnings, they leave gaps. So here's the first uncomfortable question. What if there was a civilization before ours, not primitive, not experimental, but advanced in ways that mattered? Not necessarily skyscrapers, not necessarily computers, but systems, energy, organization. What if they understood forces we are only beginning to measure? What if they learned how to extract power at a scale that felt limitless? And what if that power changed how they saw the world? Because power doesn't just enable, it tempts. It compresses time. It removes friction. It makes consequences feel distant. Sound familiar? Now ask yourself this. If a civilization reached a point where energy was abundant, would restraint still feel necessary? Or would caution begin to feel obsolete? We tend to believe that advancement equals wisdom. But that is an assumption, not a law. What if intelligence grows faster than maturity? What if capability outpaces judgment? We see that pattern today, so why would the past be immune? Here's the next question. If such a civilization existed, what would their end look like? Not slow decline, not cultural fading, but failure, sudden, irreversible. Because advanced systems tend to fail in complex ways, and when they fail, they don't fail quietly, they fail catastrophically. What if the destruction we see was not an attack, but an accident? A miscalculation, a loss of control, a system pushed beyond its limits. And what if the survivors, if there were any, understood exactly what had happened? Would they rebuild the same way? Or would they try to prevent it from ever happening again? That question matters because prevention leaves traces, not in writing, but in behavior, in design, in taboo, in what is buried, in what is avoided, in where people choose to live, and where they refuse to. So consider this. What if burying certain structures was not about worship, but about containment? What if sealing places underground was not about hiding from enemies, but about hiding from the sky? What if entire cities were designed, not for beauty, but for survival in a world that had already proven unstable? Now here's where it gets uncomfortable. Because this is no longer about them, it's about us. Ask yourself this: are we fundamentally different? We extract energy. On a planetary scale, we reshape environments. We alter systems we don't fully understand, and we do it faster every decade. We also believe we are in control, that safeguards exist, that lessons have been learned, that we are smarter than anyone who came before. But every civilization believes that, right up until it doesn't matter anymore. So here's another question. If a past civilization destroyed itself through its own advancement, would that story survive? Or would it be erased by the very forces it unleashed? Would the warning be preserved? Or would it be misinterpreted as myth? Because myths are what remain. When explanations are too dangerous to repeat, stories stripped of instruction, fear without context. Now think about this. Why do so many ancient stories describe fire from the sky, floods that erase everything, days when the sun behaves strangely, seas that rise without warning? We don't need to say what those stories mean. We only need to notice how often they appear. Across cultures, across continents, across time. And we don't need to say that they describe technology. We only need to ask, why do they describe consequences? Because consequences are what survivors remember, not mechanisms, not formulas, just outcomes. Burned land, dead cities, drowned worlds. So here's a question most people never ask. What if our current civilization is not the first to fear its own power? What if we are not inventing these anxieties, but inheriting them? What if the reason these questions feel familiar is because they have been asked before and ignored? Now let's ask the hardest question of all. If a civilization before us reached a point of no return, how would we recognize that moment in ourselves? Would it come with alarms, or would it feel like progress? Would it feel dangerous, or would it feel inevitable? Because danger rarely announces itself when it is profitable, or convenient, or normalized. It announces itself later, through consequences. And consequences don't negotiate, they arrive all at once. Just like we've seen. So instead of asking whether ancient people were capable, ask this: what if they were too capable? And what if capability without restraint is the most dangerous force of all? Now take one more step back, not into the past, into the present. We build upward, they built downward. We trust complexity. They trusted concealment. We assume continuity. They prepared for interruption. Which of those mindsets belongs to beginners and which belongs to survivors? That question does not accuse. It doesn't warn. It simply sits there, uncomfortable, because if we are repeating a cycle, then the most dangerous moment is not collapse, it's confidence. Confidence that says, this time is different. Every civilization says that, right before it isn't. So we don't need to conclude anything. We don't need to declare truth. We don't need to choose belief. We only need to acknowledge uncertainty and ask better questions. Because questions survive collapse better than answers. Answers belong to their time. Questions belong to whoever comes next. So instead of asking, did this really happen? Ask, what if it did? And if it did, what would that mean? For how we live now, what we build, what we unleash, what we assume we can control, and whether we are willing to accept that intelligence alone has never saved a civilization. Only humility has, and humility, historically, is always learned too late. So we'll leave it there, not with certainty, not with fear, but with a mirror, because the most uncomfortable hypothesis is not about the past, it's about whether the future is watching us the same way we are now watching them. Now let's leave the past, not because it's solved, but because it's familiar, and familiarity is dangerous. Look around. Not at ruins, at what's standing: glass towers, concrete megastructures, cities glowing all night like artificial constellations. From above, our world looks alive. From space, it looks permanent. We've never built bigger, never built faster, never connected more people, more systems, more power. We call this progress. They did too. Our cities don't sleep, because the systems beneath them can't. Power grids stretch across continents. One failure cascades into millions of lives going dark. Water pumps, hospitals, data centers, transportation. Everything depends on electricity, and electricity depends on balance. We've optimized for efficiency, not for fragility, not for interruption. We assume continuity. They assumed it too. We've centralized intelligence, not just in governments, but in machines. Algorithms decide what we see, what we buy, what we believe. AI optimizes supply chains, manages traffic, assists warfare. We call it assistance, but dependence doesn't announce itself loudly. It arrives quietly, one convenience at a time. We don't ask, what happens if it stops? Because stopping feels unthinkable. And that's the point. Weapons now operate at speeds faster than human decision-making. Systems respond automatically. Triggers respond to signals. Signals respond to data. Data responds to models. And models are only as good as the assumptions behind them. We trust those assumptions because we built them. They trusted theirs too. Our infrastructure is layered, complex, interdependent, which makes it powerful and brittle. A failure here doesn't stay here. It spreads, cascades, multiplies. And the more advanced a system becomes, the more spectacular its failure. History doesn't punish simplicity, it punishes arrogance. We believe redundancy equals safety. But redundancy still relies on the same foundations, same energy sources, same networks, same assumptions. We don't build down, we build up. We don't hide systems. We expose them, because exposure feels like control. But exposure also creates targets, natural, artificial, unintentional. And the most uncomfortable realization is this: we don't need an enemy, we don't need a war, we don't need intent. Complex systems fail all by themselves when pushed far enough. And when they fail, they don't fail politely, they fail everywhere. At once. Now compare this to what we've seen. Structures buried deliberately, cities erased instantly. Civilizations choosing to disappear underground, not to expand, but to survive. They didn't write warnings, they didn't leave manuals. They changed behavior, they encoded memory into architecture, into taboo, into fear, and we look at that and say, they were primitive. But what if they were cautious? What if restraint was the final stage of their intelligence? Because intelligence doesn't end with creation. It ends with knowing when to stop. Now here's the comparison we can't avoid. They reached a point where permanence felt real. So do we. They trusted their systems. So do we. They believed they had control. So do we. They thought they were permanent too, and permanence is the most seductive lie. A civilization can tell itself because it justifies everything. Expansion, acceleration, risk. Why slow down? If the future is guaranteed, why question if collapse feels impossible? But collapse never feels possible until it's already happened. So the question isn't whether we are advanced, we clearly are. The question is whether advancement alone has ever been enough. Because history suggests something else. It suggests that intelligence without humility doesn't end in enlightenment. It ends in silence, so let's not conclude. Conclusions are comforting. They close doors. This story doesn't deserve a closed door. It deserves an open one. Imagine this instead. Imagine we disappear, not in myth, not in metaphor. Tomorrow, no warning. No explanation, just absence. Cities remain, at first. Skylines still standing, cars frozen on highways, servers humming until they don't. Then systems fail, power goes dark. Water stops moving, steel rusts, glass shatters, concrete cracks. Nature doesn't attack, it reclaims, slowly, patiently. In 1,000 years, trees grow through our streets. In 10,000, coastlines shift, cities flood, satellites fall. In 100,000, our tallest towers are indistinguishable from hills. Buried, drowned, erased, and one day someone finds them. Future archaeologists, different species, different minds, different assumptions. They dig, they scan, they find foundations. Strange alloys, collapsed grids, remnants of machines. Too complex to fully understand. They argue, they debate. They publish papers. Some say we were primitive, some say we were advanced. Some say the structures were symbolic. Some say natural forces did it, and some notice patterns, buried places, sudden endings, global synchronization, and they ask questions. Not answers, the same way we are now. So here's the only question that matters. If we disappeared tomorrow, what would future archaeologists find? And would they believe it was us? Or would they assume we were something else entirely? That we rose too fast, reached too far, trusted permanence, and learned restraint too late? I'm not telling you what to think. I'm asking what you see. Tell me what you think.